This week's episode is brought to you by Lumoid. Lumoid is a try-before-you-buy service for all sorts of consumer electronics. From camera gear and drones to fitness trackers and audio equipment, they have an extensive collection of gear, and you can check them out at lumoid.com/photorectv. This week, new Lumoid customers can save 15% off their rental by using the code PHOTOREC15. And by viewers like you. Visit photorec.tv/support to learn how you can support this show and join our community of photographers.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Photo Mishmash. I'm Christina.
And I'm Toby.
And this is episode 88.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome. So you guys thought that there wasn't going to be a show today because that's what we told you last week, but we lied. There is actually
It's all my fault. I just
live show.
Didn't look at the schedule. I thought I was landing this evening, but it turned out I landed this afternoon because I had a nice direct flight straight from Florida. So
Yeah.
This is a first for the show. I've been on an airplane today.
So why don't you introduce yourself for anybody who hasn't watched the show before?
I am Toby, photographer and educator.
And I'm Christina. I'm a full-time wedding photographer, and every week we bring you photography news, discussions, we go over the winners of our Instagram challenge, and we answer your questions live at the end of the show. So if you have a photography-related question, post it in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
That's right. And did you say Instagram challenges? We have some fantastic street art photography to look at and share our honorable mentions and winners. We're going to be talking about 6D Mark II or 5D Mark IV or X, which is going to come first and what features are they going to have. Practice makes perfect and a whole pile of news stories. So we should jump into it.
Yeah, okay. So, well, first, what did people miss last week?
Well, not a lot, honestly. I've been pretty busy with the Sony event, and then I followed that up with a short family vacation down there in Florida, so I didn't put out a lot of content. But one of the things that did go out was about mobile photography phone holders. It doesn't sound terribly exciting, but as we have these tools that get better and better with capturing what we see, it's nice to be able to kind of use them professionally, like stabilized on a tripod when you want. So you should go watch that. If you're really lazy and you don't want to, the Mi Photo is really nice. If you want a way to stabilize your tripod stabilize your smartphone without having a whole lot other going on, that Mi Photo works. And if you want the full name, well, actually go watch the video or look for the links below that other video. It's linked in the show notes, and all of the stuff we're talking about, news stories, articles, the discussion is all linked in the show notes right down below this video.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about, I guess you already talked about what the gear on the table. Did you sort of combine
I did, and I also
segments?
told Riley we weren't going to do a gear on the table, but
see.
you know, I've got my fedora. That's some gear on the table that I picked up in Miami. Sony spared no expense in making sure we all had fancy fedoras. But I did want to mention, what else about gear on the table? Maybe it was just this. That I will be talking way more about the Sony a6300 very soon. And if you missed my thoughts on that, that was last week's show where I Skyped in from Florida and shared some hands-on impressions of that. It's a very nice camera. I'll tell you one thing that's really nice about the Sony system, going back and forth over the last couple of days between the a6000 or a6300 and the a7R, they all use the same batteries. And it's so nice to be able to switch batteries out of one and into the other when you want to walk out and you feel one's dead or dying. And I also love the USB charging. That was really handy. I was camping in the Everglades for 3 days, not at a powered tent outlet. So I just had my USB battery and plugged them in at night, and that was enough. Made it through those days. I wasn't photographing a ton, but enough. The camera was on and with me most of the time. So that's a benefit of that system that I was realizing, thinking about, like if I had brought along like the T6S and the 5D Mark III, that's two different battery systems and power to them as well. So.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about who won the GoPro?
We do, but you know, these things always, this is part where I'm not good at this stuff. Lumoid is picking the winner of the GoPro. They emailed me with somebody while I was away. I realized that I needed to follow up with. I haven't yet, so we're not ready to announce that, but somebody out there is going to win that GoPro. They may have already been officially picked. We just need to follow up. we'll be announcing that soon.
Okay.
So that's exciting. Also, I've ended up with 2 of these. So if you're really excited about this, stay tuned. We're not going to do another giveaway while the big Safari giveaway is happening right now. But these other little things will happen soon as well. So stay tuned.
Cool.
For that.
So, do we want to say anything else about Lumoid, or do we want to move on?
Well, we do,
news?
because they're one of the sponsors of the show, and we thank them for their sponsorship. I popped over to Lumoid because they're always adding new things all of the time to see what they have. Now, Lumoid is a great place to try before you buy gear. And those of you who've been listening for a while, you know the deal with them that is so great is that you can rent the stuff, and you earn credits while you rent towards purchasing things down the road. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you've rented, but something else that you find. I love that they now have in the Peak Design Everyday Messenger bag. Now, I've had my hands on this bag. I haven't used it yet. I know Tony Northrup loves his. He had his in Miami. It does look like a really nice bag. Bags are one of those things where you can listen to people review them. You can go into the store, touch it, feel it. But if you don't carry it around for a day or a weekend, you don't really know how well it's going to work for you. So $5 a day gets you this Peak Design Everyday Messenger bag, and try it out. And again, if you like it, you can put those credits towards purchasing it down the road. And if you decide otherwise, maybe you want to put those purchases credits towards the 70-200 f2.8, say, something else that could fit in this bag, like that lens. So they're great. And not only do they have, of course, the Peak Design stuff, but they've got these nice kits set up for you. So if you want to kind of say, I've been a crop shooter all of my life. Let me see what all this hubbub is about full frame. You can come in here and you can go to the Road Trip, which I have rented before. That is the 6D, the 17-40 lens, and the 51.8. They need to switch that 51. Oh no, they did. See, Lumoid's on top of it. It is the 51.8 STM. They're using the older picture though. That is a great kit to kind of explore the differences of what full frame will do for you. Plus they've got drones, the fitness trackers we've talked about before, a lot of different options.
Or as part of their kit, if you're like me, or if you are not like me but have been interested in shooting some film, they even have a film kit that you can rent. So you can rent a film camera and then some lenses and accessories, I believe. So that's really cool.
It is. That is very cool. So check them out, lumoid.com/photorectoby, and you can save 15% off your order if you are a first-time renter from Lumoid. So a little bit of savings, plus you're putting that towards the gear you're going to buy down the road.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lumoid. Okay, let's move on to news. First up, I seem to have lost my news section. So first up is a news article that's sort of got me confused.
Yawn. Oh, okay. Why are you confused?
Because isn't there already a T6? Why is...
This is missing the letters I and S.
So that's going to be the update.
Yes.
I see.
This is going to be the update to their bare bones entry-level DSLR.
Okay.
That they've been offering now for a while. The T3,
Seems
the
like
T5,
they're going backwards.
the T6. Well, that's a great thing to say, because I do think that these bare bone models often are just kind of a backwards. You're almost always better off. Well, here, let's see what the specs are.
Why wouldn't they release it along with the others? Seems... And is there going to be a T7 this year?
No. Oh, a T7i?
Whatever. Like T7i, T7s, T7. Is there going to be an update? Like a...
We don't know. It is quite possible that later this year there will be a T7. I don't expect one anytime in the first half of this year. I'd even be surprised if it happens this year and think it might push it to spring. But let's go with the specs of this real quick. It's 18 megapixels, so that is a step backwards from the 24 megapixels we got in the T6s, T6i. Digic 4 plus. ISO range 100 to 6400, expandable 12,800. It's going to have Wi-Fi and NFC, full HD video, so that's 1080, probably at 30 frames a second, the video snapshot feature, and then continuous shooting speed of 3 frames a second. No articulating screen. Again, this is, I feel like if you're on a very strict budget, you're looking to get into a DSLR, last year's model, like the T5i, would be a better option for many people. The articulating screen is why. It doesn't even say, does this say it's a touch screen? No. So, you know,
Why, Canon? Why?
well, because they want to offer that bare bones price that sits there in the big box stores, and somebody walks in and says, I want a DSLR, and this is what they think they should get.
I see.
So,
Wow.
yeah. It's not exciting. Last year's model is more exciting to me for someone who's on a budget. So, I think we can move on from that. I'm going to help Liam get up on the table since he's ready to do that.
Yeah.
Liam.
So next, leaf filters, which if you're familiar with the Iceland vlogs that Toby put together back when he went to Iceland this past summer, and he used some of the leaf filters to capture some of the waterfalls. And they've released a 15-stop super stopper neutral density filter that allows you to, your mileage may vary, but it allows you to capture about 17-hour exposures, which is insane.
That is insane.
Is your camera like gonna survive that even? It seems like.
Sure. No, that's a good
I mean,
question.
I'm mostly kidding, but
Right. Who wants to leave their sensor on for 17 hours straight? That's an extended time.
Yeah.
Oh, so a couple of things. One, I did use those leaf filters in Iceland. I never officially talked about them. It never made its way into the blog, and I never made a review afterwards. Since then, some different filters have arrived here that I'll be talking about soon that I'm excited about. But let's break this down a little bit more. They've got this exposure guide here, which I think is helpful. So let's say you are a lazy photographer and you want to shoot a long exposure of a waterfall in the middle of the day. This thing is certainly going to allow you to do that. Because let's say middle of the day, your shutter speed probably would be about 1/500th of a second if you've got bright light. So that's going to let you get to a 1-minute exposure. That is plenty long enough to blur water. They do admit or say that there will be a slate color cast that you can then fix in post. That was part of my feeling in Iceland using the system. And this isn't a knock on Lee. This is pretty much all of the big stoppers. When you really block that much light, you introduce color casts. A lot of the waterfalls in Iceland throw up so much mist that it would just really soften the overall picture. So these are cool. There's certainly excellent specific uses for them, but don't think you're going to throw this on and go out taking amazing long shutter speed photos automatically.
especially because I was actually going to bring up this point, but I feel like it fits in nicely with the last thing that you said, that just because you stick a neutral density filter on your camera and then point, like in a really sunny situation, like say you're like out in midday and you want to capture this waterfall and you put a filter on it and you point the camera at the waterfall, that doesn't mean you're going to get a great photo. I mean, you still have to think about the light and the quality of the light and where is it, and are there like weird highlights that are hitting the waterfall in a weird way. So to me, this seems a little bit excessive. Like 15 stops, that seems like a lot, because it's not just about cutting down on the light that much.
Right. And to get to 17 hours, that's starting with a 2-second normal shutter speed. So, it's already going to be pretty dim at that point. But yeah, I'm confident somebody out there is going to create some amazing, very long exposures with these things. But I think it's a great point. That light is very harsh, and just because you're blocking it doesn't mean you don't have a big dynamic range, as Christina just said.
Not just dynamic range, but just, like contrast and just harsh shadows that just don't look flattering. You may just be better off waiting for the right moment.
Yeah. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Most people watching are the same people that always watch, but thank you. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Get up early or stay out later, and you can get these pictures without paying for a very expensive. Most of the time, you can get these pictures without paying for. And then there's the Northrop technique. He didn't pioneer it, but I think he's popularized it more recently, of just taking multiple images and then stacking them, which also works as well.
Yeah.
But again, you might deal with that harsh light or the way the light is when you're speaking. It's all about the light. It's all about the light.
So next on the news is Sony is going to launch a wireless flash control system of its own. So they are just taking this whole Sony A7 system and they're fitting it with flashes, which means that if you were considering changing to Sony from like Canon or Nikon, but we're not doing it because you didn't have a reliable, like if you did do a lot of event photography and there weren't any reliable flash options, that's going to change
right and
very soon.
Right. There are some people that like to stay within the brand to feel like they are the most compatible, and this was exciting. They let us know about this. They let us see the prototype, not in action, but when we were down in Florida last week. It looks very nice. We'll be bringing more hands-on information. There are other systems. Photix offers wireless systems that work very nicely with the Sony as well. So there have been other systems, but now this ecosystem is growing. This, along with that 24-70, the 85 and the 70-200, suddenly in the last 4 months, Sony has really taken a huge step forward and said, here is this well-rounded, all the lenses professional event photographer and wedding photographers could need or want, or most of them. I'm sure there are other lenses some people want, but this really covers the bulk of most people's needs to cover these events, and the flash system. So here it is. Nice job, Sony.
Yeah. Another thing they've introduced is a Shot HX80 travel zoom camera. So this looks like a point and shoot to me.
Yep.
And I don't understand who it's for and why we're talking about it.
Well, again, they talked about this at the show. They showed us this. This is a 30x zoom, very pocketable point and shoot, which looks very nice. It's going to have an 18 megapixel sensor in there. That zoom is an equivalent of 24 to 720 millimeters with optical stabilization. So it is going to be a little bit smaller than the RX100, and it does have a little pop-up viewfinder as well. So it looks nice, and it's going to be only $350. So there's a lot to like about that.
Oh my God. Were you done talking about it?
I was done talking about it. We can move on.
So another announcement or gear announcement is Profoto's releasing a collapsible beauty dish, which I find to be really cool because, like, really the main disadvantage about beauty dishes is that they're not that portable, because they're just like, they're usually made out of hard plastic, and you have to have like a big ol' thing to carry them, but they've fixed it. Right,
or as this article says, it's very important that they don't get kind of warped in any certain way, because they'll cast a funny shadow, things like this. So this is one that's set up to be nicely portable. Does that make you...
No.
No.
I don't want a beauty dish because I don't shoot. I mean, if I'm doing like glamour photography or like fashion photography or beauty photography, then I might consider it, but I don't ever shoot that, so... You
wouldn't be bringing this along to a wedding?
Definitely not.
Okay. But it's nice to have options.
Yeah.
And now this is going to match with their Profoto B1, B2 heads. It's pretty high-end stuff, but nice as well.
Ona has released a new backpack, the Leather Clifton. So if you are into really nice, stylish camera bags, you may want to take a look.
I really wanted to say if you're into leather.
If you're into leather as well, yes, you have to be into leather a lot. But do they not have it in other?
No, not at this time. So
I'm on it. I'm sure they'll release it in a canvas version.
They have other backpacks already. This isn't their first backpack. What's special about this one though is that all of the bits inside are removable, and this is the first time they've offered that. We've reviewed Ona bags on here before. You are a big fan of them.
I like them a lot, yes.
It's expensive.
They are very expensive.
It's well made, it's very pretty, but man, that's a lot of money for what to me looks like a fairly limited bag and what you can do with it. But if those style points are important to you, it is well made, then
it's very durable.
You're happy to pay that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it protects your gear, which is the most important thing.
Yeah. I've got a bag down at my feet that I took to Miami that has changed my life a little bit, and I will be talking more about that soon. It is not leather. It is not quite as stylish in some people's minds, but in my mind, I love it. It's awesome.
It is a nice backpack, though. I mean, it might not be like,
The one
it
at my
might not,
feet?
it's definitely, it looks like a camera backpack, which is what I like about the Onas, is that they don't look like camera bags.
Right.
But it's still nice.
Right, but one of the reasons to not look like a camera bag is to do so you don't say "scream, steal me." And if you're walking around with a high-end leather bag on your back, I think that is a bit more of a target in some cases.
It is, but it still doesn't. People still don't think that you have like thousands of dollars worth of photography gear in there. I mean, they might try to take your wallet or something, maybe, but
Yeah, yeah.
either way, I mean, it's not that huge of a selling point, but.
Right. Looks very nice. Okay.
So the last story for today, except for photos from space, is Google copyright takedown requests have increased. They have doubled to 76 million last month. And actually, this article from Petapixel, so they try to tie it to photography, saying, like they said, while many of the requests appear to be in response to the illegal sharing of movies and music, we're guessing that photography infringement takedowns represent at least some portion of the total count, which is like, it's like, we don't have actual data to support our claim, but we just are assuming. So
Right.
it's a little weak,
Right.
but it is an interesting statistic.
Yep. I actually meant to stick that in the extra bits to talk about because I read that too, and I was like, well, we don't really know how much and who is doing that. But it's nice to know that there's a system in place, and we've talked on other shows about watermarking versus not watermarking in the TinEye and the lens tag services and things like that as well. I got one more quick tip. I'd love to add in quick tips on future shows. Lifehacker has this: keep a washer on your keychain to tighten camera quick release plates. How many times have you been someplace and forgotten a tool to add or remove your quick release plate? I usually have a coin in each of my camera bags that I take with me, but I really like the idea of putting a washer
That is
on
a
my
great
keychain to
Also,
always have that with me.
A hex wrench, or like multiple hex wrenches,
Right.
would be nice to
Right.
have on your.
Well, that's why I recently have bought a very small multi-tool that I try to remember to always be with me everywhere. It's a little too big to be a keychain. I really don't like a lot of things in my pockets, to let you know that about me. But it is in my camera bag for just that reason, so that I'm never toolless, because I don't want to be toolless. It's a bad position to be in. So I thought that was a good tip to pass on. A coin, or even better, a washer on your keychain.
Yeah.
I'd like to get rid of keys completely, though. That's a different story. All Bluetooth locks, everything, everywhere. That's what I want.
Do we have photos from space
We
today?
do.
Okay.
Maybe I accidentally
It's not a
erased it,
link.
but I have it linked up right here. This is Scott sent this in. This is from just a week or two ago. Expedition 46 flight engineer Tim Peake of the European Space Agency shared this picture of a glowing aurora taken from the International Space Station. They were kind of flying through this and over this. Now, I think last week we talked about auroras as well, or actually not last week, the week before. We've got a little bit of aurora on the mind because I'm looking forward to, it feels a little far away now, but what always happens is it creeps up and all of a sudden it's here, the Alaska Northern Lights trip with the McKays, November 30th to December 7th, 2016. The main point or goal of this trip is to put you in a place to be able to capture amazing auroras. It's going to be a little chilly, but that is the best
worth
time
it.
of the year to go and capture these amazing events, bucket list type stuff.
Yeah, and there are things that that Allie was telling us about the trip that I guess I sort of didn't think about. So they work with this guide, and I don't know if they'll be working with the same one, but I'm assuming that they'll work with someone similarly qualified. So the guy that they worked with last time is a photographer, and she just like moved to Alaska to be a photographer there, and so now she leads some of these trips and teaches people how to photograph the aurora. And there are certain things that that she passed on certain bits of information that, even though you might be a photographer, you might be experienced with astrophotography, you might have a good bit of experience with just like nighttime photography or light painting. It takes a different sort of skill set to photograph the aurora beautifully and nicely and to come away with really great photos. So, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to really know anything about photography. You can just come and be eager about it or excited about photography and just learn a lot and have fun and meet great people.
That's right. I mean, that's what these trips do. Not only are David and Allie, of course, awesome photographers, but other people on the team are, and they often connect with these people that kind of like jumpstart you to a high-end level to capture whatever it is, wherever you are. Other highlights of this tour is walking across glaciers and photographing those meltwater pools on top of the glacier, dog sledding with an Iditarod champion. So again, that's one of the things I love about these trips. It's not just about the photography, but like in New Zealand, I had a chance to swim in a glacial stream and a glacial lake. I've got to take that opportunity. When else do you get to do something like that? Or just stand out under the stars in Mount Cook. So, I mean, these trips are awesome, and I hope somebody out there, some peoples, will decide to go along because it's so much fun to meet you all when you come on these trips. We've made some really good friends from people that have come on trips in the past, and join us. All the information is linked in the show notes right down below, but this is the McKay Live Alaska Northern Lights Tour, November 30th to December 7th.
Yeah, don't miss it.
Dalibor wants me to just get all of my keys keyed the same so that I only have to carry around one key.
It's not a bad idea.
Don't think that'll work. Car key, house key. I'm just going to go with Bluetooth lock. Nobody here in Brattleboro is ever going to hack those Bluetooth locks. So.
All right, it's time for our Instagram challenge. Last week's challenge was street art. There weren't a ton of submissions this week.
There were not a ton. I did have the right one. There were not a ton of submissions. I was inspired by the Windwood Walls area of Miami. Fantastic graffiti, street art, murals, whatever you want to call them. So that was where that challenge came from. And we had a good number of submissions. Now, part of the problem was I didn't think we were going to have a show, so I made it a 2-week challenge and then decided.
Oh, I see.
So some people might have been waiting with their best ones. Sorry. Tough tooties. It's just a little Instagram challenge. Let's start with Christina, your first honorable mention from Photog Mike.
So I really like the contrast of I don't know, I feel like the black and white was really nice, even though a lot of this street art is in color, usually very bright colors. I just like the black and white, and I liked how much it stands out, how much this particular painting stands out from the rest of the image, but then it's also kind of framed by the greenery in the right. So yeah. I appreciated the composition and the
I like it. It's very
processing.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Another honorable mention?
Another black and white one. This is cool. This is one of the few sort of like, I guess there is street art. I was thinking for some reason that it was like street photography. So I was trying to take that into consideration. But yeah, I like that this street art is sort of, you can tell that it's in its, I don't know, it almost seems alive because there are people, there's a human element to it.
Right. Well, I posted a tip on Facebook from Miami about capturing street art, and I really like how this person, Numinous Wilds, I like that name too, has incorporated elements of the street. They didn't just capture this graffiti straight on. I also like how the artist used elements in the wall to kind of work with the street art.
Yeah,
so
that
those
is very
two
cool.
elements together, both the photographer capturing a bigger cross-section that shows us what's going on, and the artists themselves. So Numinous Wilds, I really like that one a lot. And then your winner, is that your winner?
That is. Yeah, I really like the snow, and I like the sculpture. I think it's really awesome. Yeah, and I like the center composition. I think it's cool. There's a little bit of an intersection back there with that sign. It's a face, so it is kind of competing with the face of the statue. But
the Gregory's Coffee sign right here.
Yeah. But that said, it's still a great image.
Yep. I agree, and I actually made it. I made it one of my honorable mentions. I love the shutter speed you chose here, and I never know if that's deliberate or not. But when photographing snow, you can really make it feel very different depending on your shutter speed. Either basically freezing the flakes in place, pun intended, or slowing the shutter speed a little bit to get this blur. And so we've got the sideways motion of all of these snowflakes. I love it. I love the snow that has accumulated on the statue, on him. And I actually didn't notice that face until you mentioned it. So, like I said, I think this is a strong image, and I picked it as one of my honorable mentions. I also picked this one, which it jumped out at me. It doesn't, not really street art as I was thinking about it, but I just love this kind of frame and simplistic image. I really like this.
Yeah, I think that one's great too.
Thank you, Luke. And winner from Maxim G. The gaze of the man straight to the guy in the wheelchair is perfect. I love it. And that contrast with that rough intersection with the little girl in this giggly face, I think is a really interesting capture, and it grabbed my attention, and I like it. So, that's my winner.
What's the challenge for next week?
The challenge for next week, forced perspective. And you could think the tourist cliche picture of touching the top of the Washington Monument or the Eiffel Tower, or you could go more clever than that. So lots of different options, lots of different ways to work with that. I will try my best to participate. Christina, you probably will not. Nope.
Maybe. We'll see.
We had somebody write, I can't remember who, somebody wrote in, I think David wrote in recently, said he'd love to see more participation from us in these. I'd like to do that. It'd be nice, but we don't always find the time. So, forced perspective, you got 1 week. Let's see them. Congratulations to our winners and our honorable mentions. You did a nice job. And if you're thinking on the fence about participating in this, just do it. It's fun. And I like seeing all of your pictures. We do look at all of them. And sometimes in the future, sometimes we like to critique a little bit more as well. I'm not going to do that this week, though. So.
Great. Let's move on. What's next? Oh, so we're going to have a little bit of a discussion you ran, or you looked at an article on Lifehacker. Do you want to talk about it a little bit, and then we can jump into a little discussion about?
It's a super short discussion, and it was a article that said basically, if you, where'd it go? Any skill you're not practicing is wasting away. So this came across my feed today. And you've all heard the old adage, practice makes perfect. But practice isn't just for building skills, though. It's also for maintaining the ones you've built. Now, we've been lied to all of these years because you'd say, once you learn to ride a bike, you never forget how to ride a bike. It's the same true with taking a photo. Once you've taken a photo, you know how to take more photos. But what this article says and study says is that if we don't use it, we lose it very quickly. And we're not talking about just basically being able to take a photo, but that deeper part of seeing good photos and being able to capture them, and also the technical side, being efficient and quick in setting what the appropriate shutter speed, the appropriate aperture, and ISO for the scene, and even choosing the right focal length. So if you aren't doing that often, you are kind of doing yourself a disservice if you want to be a better photographer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I mean, practicing doesn't necessarily mean that, like training. Practice can be incorporated into just actually shooting. Like if your goal is to become a better portrait photographer, then set up some portraits and you can try to get paid or just do them for free. But there's still real jobs that give you practice to get better. So the word practice is good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to set aside time, like unofficial time, to practice, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's the only way to get better. And I don't think that you can ever stop growing. So the practice just continues.
Right. And that's why, there's a subgroup in our photography support group right now, which you can get into as a Patreon supporter, that is doing the weekly challenges. And I think the weekly or the daily challenges are a fantastic way to keep from getting in a rut and kind of setting your camera down for a couple weeks at a time and losing some of these skills, especially with these challenges, because they are not something you necessarily would pick to shoot, which is in your comfort zone. So they get you out of your comfort zone a bit and allow you to think about capturing things different ways, stretching your brain, making it more flexible for future photography situations. Yeah. So I just wanted to remind people about that, remind people that these challenges are a great way to do it, not only Instagram, the ones that we throw, but the one that are support group, or just go out there and find there's lots of them out there. And also, if you're doing like the 365 or that 52 and you miss a week or something, don't use that as an excuse to give up completely. Just continue on from where you are. It's not the end of the world, and you're going to be better off continuing than giving up completely. I think that goes without saying, but I just said it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so let's move on to our live Q&A. We have a couple of questions.
Oh, but wait, there's one more discussion article that is the title of this whole show.
Oh, right, okay.
Can't forget that, because everybody will downvote it. They'll still downvote it if I don't talk about it enough. I'm just going to go over this lightly. This is an interesting rumors that have come in. First off, I put out my video about what I felt like the Canon 5D Mark IV was going to bring to the table, and I asked you all that. I'm going to do a follow-up video, or maybe in next week's show, a follow-up and give you the responses people put in there, because you could vote in that video. Say whether I was right or wrong, or whether you agreed or disagreed, or give a chance to share your opinion. It's been interesting since I put that video out, and I don't think this is connected. There's been a good bit of 5D Mark IV or 5DX, as some are calling it now, information. It does seem likely that there will be 4K. Whew, good. It does seem likely that it's going to be coming sometime after April NAB announcement, NAB being the National Association of Broadcasters. That's really a video-focused event, and it sounds like Canon wants to get the 1DX out the door and selling, and then say, and here is the 5D Mark III follow-up, whatever they're going to call it. But there's interesting, as I made that video, there were comments, and also I've heard from other people of when is the 6D Mark II coming? So this rumor came into Canon Rumors a couple of weeks ago, or a week or so ago, that says Canon's going to make some changes to its full-frame lineup. The 6D Mark II is actually going to move up market pretty significantly and be about where the 5D Mark III is now.
Oh, okay.
And the 5D Mark, 4 or X will move up a little bit higher, but that 6D price will stay about the same.
Is the 5D Mark IV price going to stay the same too, or are they going to try to?
Yeah, no, it's going to stay the same as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thinking at least. So
how is it going to move up market? Explain that.
It is the current 6D is quite, I don't want to call it handicapped, because for some photographers it is a perfect camera, but it's only got 9 focus points. Its focus is kind of slow.
Right. So it'll just get upgraded.
Yeah, but this point of this article is a significant upgrade, not just kind of a bump up in specs, but a bump up in where it falls in the line.
Okay.
I don't think this is going to happen, and I also don't think we're going to see a 6D Mark II before the 5D Mark III. I think they want, or the 5D Mark III replacement. Yeah, 4. How many times can we say Mark something? Because for the similar reason, the 1DX, they want to get that 1DX out. Here's this amazing camera. If you want it, get it. It's the only good option now. Then a little while later, okay, well, here's the 5D Mark III follow-up. That's a great camera. Get it. It's the only option in this class. And then the 6D Mark II is going to come out. And I would think that Canon would want a very affordable entry-level full-frame camera, because that is an easy path, one, to compete with Sony, but two, an easy path to say, oh, 7D Mark II users, you realize you're not shooting so much sports, maybe you're shooting landscape with that? Well, here's a full-frame camera that is cheaper or about the same price that you want to upgrade to. So that's all I wanted to say about it. Pretty short. I'd love to see comments, though. Remember, folks in the chat room, anything you are saying, we love to read every once in a while right here on this little tablet. But if you have a particular comment, or you're not watching live anymore, leave it right down below. I love to read your thoughts. Many times it makes me go, that's a great point, and that affects my future videos.
Yeah.
So thank you for those people.
And if you're enjoying this show, please give us a thumbs up. It always helps.
It always helps. Thumbs ups always help.
So, okay, so now we're going to move to the Q&A, and I think there's a few more questions now. The first question is from mhot18, and they want to know, what filter do you usually use?
I use a...
What's the filter you use the most?
I use a nice B+W circular polarizer. That's the filter that I use the most if I'm using a filter. That's one I don't agree with Tony saying that you can recreate all of the effects of a polarizer without it. I don't agree with that. But, I don't use it a ton. But when I do, that's the filter that's on. And that's the filter I use most if I look back over my history as a photographer. As I said, I've used that before kind of as a cheap ND when I'm photographing waterfalls. It's been a favorite of mine for many years to photograph kind of longer exposure waterfalls. That was the filter I used. I now have an ND filter, and I now have this new system that I'll be talking about after I use it a bit. So.
Okay. BC Turney wants to know if we have any tips and or essential gear for outdoor portrait lighting. Gear, maybe like a circular reflector, like just a big 5-in-1 reflector, but that's only if you have someone to hold it for you. Sometimes just adding extra gear can be somewhat of a hassle. Get yourself a nice portrait lens, a 50 millimeter, an 85, something like that with a little bit more zoom, so that you can compress the background and isolate your subject. Otherwise, just study light. We have a great video that shows you all the different types of portrait lighting. Familiarize yourself with them. Learn to watch for those shapes of light in people when you talk to them, when you're like going about your way on television. Just try to watch for those patterns, and then slowly you will become, it'll become second nature, and you'll be able to see it in your subjects and be able to identify good light pretty much wherever you go. That's really the key. Is understanding what makes good portrait lighting, what type of light is flattering and is going to make your subject look his or her best, and just learning light.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's a good suggestion.
Look for that video. We'll probably put it in the show notes down below.
Yep. Max wants to know, for landscape camera, should you wait for the 6D Mark II or get an A7 II plus Metabones like Scott? Scott in our support group has recently put that together and is quite happy. Max, if you aren't in a hurry, I might wait, but...
The 6D Mark II is going to be significantly cheaper, isn't it?
No, not than the A7 II.
Oh, the A7.
Yeah, the A7
Oh, I thought
II.
he got the A7.
Yeah. But, Sony is winning me over when you talk about landscapes, because you can walk out the door with a lighter camera. Even after you put a lens on it, it's still lighter and a smaller camera in a more travel-friendly package. And that sensor in there, we don't know what the 6D Mark II sensor is going to bring, so I can't really say, but based on what we know, I don't think it's going to be as exciting as the Sony a7 II sensor is currently. That is a nice sensor. You can really pull up the shadows. You can underexpose a little bit and pull up those shadows in post to get a nicer dynamic range than you do on the Canon side. I will say that, working with Metabones is good, but that is an added extra expense to think about. And I'll also say that I don't love being in this place right now where I do have multiple systems of cameras, and when I think about what lens I want to add to my collection next, there's many lenses now than there used to be, because I was like, oh, well, this would be nice for the Sony, oh, this would be nice for the Canon, oh, this would be nice for the GH4. So if you can avoid having multiple systems, I think you're going to be better off, because
Definitely.
none of them are that much more exciting than what you have now.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Is Sony's, and Andrew Engel wants to know if Sony's 51.8 is as sharp as Canons?
Sharper. In Sony, I think, Sony's got a 55 1.8. Is that what you mean? I don't think they have a 50 1.8. They have a 55 1.8 that is exceptionally sharp, but
Yeah.
it's very expensive. Canon has the cheap 50 1.8 STM.
Right.
It's a good lens.
Yeah.
It's a nice improvement, but it is not as sharp as Sony's.
Yeah.
It's also like a seventh of the price. So bear what you will.
Gavin Harrison wants to know what our thoughts are on the Fuji X Pro 2.
Oh, you skipped Mr. Quatch, though, real quick. What's the best lens for portraits with a Canon 7D Mark II?
50. Get a 50.
On a crop sensor, you would still recommend the 50?
Yeah.
Okay. 51.8. Cheap, and it's a great lens. You could also go down to the 35 f2, but
Yeah.
or the Sigma 35.
But you're going to pay more
1.4.
money.
Yes, you're going to pay more money.
If you're looking to save money, then
Yeah.
50. Gavin Harrison wants to know what our thoughts are on the Fuji X Pro 2. I feel like we talked about this camera fairly recently, and it seems like a really cool camera. It's that retro Fuji camera,
Yep.
isn't it? That retro looking
Yep.
one. Yeah, I kind of want it. Like, I've been liking the idea of just having a small compact camera just for travel. So I don't have to lug my big DSLR. Because there are things that I like to capture just to remember that maybe I don't approach in a kind of artistic way. And I like the idea of having something small and compact.
But what
and
about your phone?
I like my phone too, yes. But it's more about the routine and the habits that I formed when I shoot. So I capture a lot of photos with my phone, and those photos mostly go to Instagram, and then I don't do anything with them. So I like the idea of like having just a little camera that I can still bring photos into my computer, and then, yeah, I don't know. I kind of just like the idea of getting a small camera, and I like the X Pro 2. And I actually am making a little bit of an arbitrary comment because I don't remember all of the specs. I just remember really liking it when we discussed it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I haven't formed an opinion yet.
I know it's got that really nice new sensor, or not sensor, viewfinder technology.
Yeah.
That has it's like a rangefinder where it lines up the
Yep.
something or other.
If I'd say
I don't remember
the
exactly.
Fujis are nice cameras, the sensors are very good. If you value that kind of manual feel and control, then I think they're excellent, along with those other benefits of them. So, what does that say?
Yeah. C. Reinhardt wants to know, anyone know of a good cart for lugging your gear on trails? I've seen people convert jogging strollers. You'd think someone would have invented this because photographers buy everything. Very good point. Capitalize on this idea. I think you've got something here.
Well,
So my friend Steve, who I've talked about in the past here on the show, who's a portrait and wedding photographer, he has this wagon, which is just like it's just a very sturdy, like sort of all-terrain wagon that he uses to carry a lot of heavy stuff like light stands and like heavy portable lights and things like that. So maybe that you just have to either have someone carry it for you or just like carry it yourself. But it would be quite easy to, navigate sort of rough terrain on it, or on trails and stuff. Yeah, look into a wagon. It's not covered, so you'd have to be careful that stuff doesn't come out of it.
I'd also give
that's
you a
what I've
little bit
seen.
of hard time of saying, do you really need to bring all of this stuff? I find that the amount of stuff I bring often is inversely proportionate to my fun and enjoyment of an outing. Whereas if I go out with just a camera
that's an
and
excellent
a
point.
lens, that's what I got, and that's what I'm going to make pictures with. Whereas if or the Iceland trip, I brought everything in the kitchen sink, and every time I get off the bus and be like, okay, we're going to hike about a mile from the bus, or maybe we never hiked that far, a half mile. Do I want to bring everything? Do I want to bring this lens, that lens? And so it became this mental struggle each time. And if you can simplify down a good bit, I think you're going to be happier. So just keep that in mind. We're going to answer these last two, and then we're going to move into the after show, where we are answering more for those who are watching live. What lenses do I recommend for the A6300, asks Andrew. And Auntie asks, what would be a good walk-around lens for the A6000 or A6300, reasonably priced? Well, the very first option, I don't know if you consider this reasonably priced because it's not cheap, but the Sony 16-70 f4 from, that's the Sony Zeiss branded lens. It is $1,000, but it has a fantastic walk-around lens on a crop body like the Sony. It's equivalent to that kind of that standard kit of 24 to 105. And it is stabilized as well, which is nice because the A6000 and A6300 are not. I don't really care that it ends at f4 with both those cameras. Their high ISO is pretty good. I used this lens a good bit with the A6300 last week, and I was very happy with that combination. Cheaper than that? Well, there's the kit lens that is bundled with it, and you know, that'll do the job for a while. That plus that 35 f2.8 prime, or the new Sigma 30 prime, that's a kind of very nice lens as well. So it kind of depends on what you want to capture and where you want to go from there, but those are the ones I would recommend. We got one other announcement. You know, you can watch videos like this to learn about photography, but one of the best ways is to go hands-on with somebody. And our friend Jeff, actually I didn't tell you this, Jeff Jackowski, he is a fantastic portrait studio photographer, lives nearby here in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
He's running, later this month, he's running a 3-day workshop that is going to take through, let me just run through some of what you cover in this. Studio lighting, outdoor lighting, off-camera flash, window lighting, posing singles, couples, groups, posing to sell wall art. Sorry, I can't read. Pricing.
Hey Riley, can we get Toby's screen on here?
Price list creation, marketing, in-person sales strategies, business techniques, profitable workflow, packaging and presentation, building client rapport, and more. So this is a photography studio boot camp. It's going to be held at his studio. This is Jeff and Carol, his wife. They run. We walked into this studio. Beautiful photos on the walls all over the place. A cabinet full of serious awards from professional photographers, and they're awesome teachers. So you put this combination together, and this is a very good investment. So he asked me to share this with you all. They have a couple of spots available still. March 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Obviously, you probably want to be in the area or
this is a great
able to
deal
travel.
for a 3-day workshop.
I know.
Let me just say that.
Lunch is included.
And lunch, yeah.
Right.
That's a really good deal.
You think about getting all of this content or buying one new piece of gear, and this is going to be a much better investment in that case.
Yeah.
And just really nice people. So awesome studio, really cool setup. Will be a lot of fun. Very small, 12 people total. So you're going to have hands-on time and personal instruction. This isn't going to be sitting in the back of a classroom taking notes. This is going to be working through this stuff and doing it.
Yeah. We'll leave his contact info down below so you can get in touch with him.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a great deal. If you were considering taking a class, I would definitely at least check this out.
Yep. And now we move into that after show. This is the portion of the show where if you're watching live, you get to follow along, see us poke the cat, and answer a few more questions, and I'll share how many bug bites I got in the Everglades, plus some of my frustrations with shooting Sony and a possible solution.
If you're watching live, you will get to see that in just a few minutes, but if you're not, consider becoming a Patreon supporter, which allows you to watch the after show. Sometimes we do critiques. We allow you to submit photos
we got
for
critiques
critique.
tonight as well.
Oh, okay, so we're doing a critique tonight. Yeah, and just good old banter.
That's right. And other things besides the after show that you get to watch recorded, you get access to our PhotoRec support group and or the Lightroom group and all of our Lightroom support videos. That's 6 hours of Lightroom instruction that take you from installing it to being able to professionally, I say professionally because you pour your heart and soul into that portrait editing and really help people learn how to edit people, edit landscapes as well. That's all in there. So consider being a Patreon supporter because this show, making this show, it's not free. And we thank those people who are supporters out there. We thank the wonderful people that are in the group. They make it awesome. I just come along every once in a while, press the like button, and answer a question. But most of those people in there are fantastic.
How can they find out about becoming a Patreon supporter?
They can go to photorec.tv/support. That's where they can find more information to support what we do here on this channel.
We'll leave the link
Thanks.
down below. And we'll catch you next week if you aren't going to see the after show for whatever reason. At the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. U.S. Eastern Time, I guess.
Okay.
All right.
Let's move on to the after show. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for watching. Thumbs up.